what popular sayings are actually bullshit. The lightning never strikes twice in the same spot. Yes, it does, especially if that spot is a high metal structure. It will be struck twice, even more than just 2 times. The Empire State Building gets struck by lightning between 25 and 100 times every year. Without a lightning rod, these strikes would ground themselves through the building's wiring, or through the people working on one of its 103 floors, causing untold amounts of damage. I've heard the silliness of this explained by saying people only use 10% of their car, because to use 100% they'd have to use the accelerator, brake, clutch, handbrake, both turn signals, heater, air conditioning, seatbelt light, check oil light and airbag all at the same time. Dude, absolutely. When I was a kid, other kids would just come at me and take stuff from me or harass me, and when I reported it, usually the thing was taken away and the both of us got put in timeout. I always thought, what if I robbed or punched someone in real life? Would that put us both in jail? As a child, I heard in my home doctors and ambulance men say, "Mrs. Stewart, you must have done something to provoke him." Mrs. Stewart, it takes 2 to make an argument. Wrong. My mother did nothing to provoke that, and even if she had, violence is never, ever a choice that a man should make, ever. Sir Patrick Stewart, discussing his mother's abuse from his father. Whenever I hear this, I think of a quote from a NASA astronaut. I can't remember which one though. The astronaut was part of an experiment where they had to wear glasses that flipped their vision vertically. After 3 days their brains compensated and started to see things the right way up despite the glasses. They took the glasses off and everything was inverted and took 3 days to correct. He later went on to say, "Don't trust your brain, it can't tell which way is up. Don't trust your heart, if it stops once it will kill you. Instead, trust your anal sphincter, it can tell the difference between a solid, a liquid and a gas, and it always gives a shit." Well, I know that, blah blah blah. I'm sorry, that's not correct. The policy is, blah. What happened to the customer is always right. Obviously I don't have an answer for that, at least not one I can give you, but it's stupid to think that just because you're a customer you can demand anything you want and we have to do it. You're also far from the first person to threaten to sue us or get me fired, and I'm sure you won't be the last. But if it makes you more comfortable, I can point you to where we publicly list all of our policies so you can review them with the lawyer you claim to have hired. Hate this bullshit. It compels people to victim blame and never hold wrongdoers accountable. My relatives said it all the time when I was molested as a kid. It was either my fault, my destiny, or my karma for being hurt, and that I should leave it up to God, their destiny, to punish them for their actions. It's just a fancy way of saying I'm too weak, lazy to be held responsible. The inherent meaning behind Nietzsche's quote is quite different than the meaning it holds today, and it's not to be taken literally, as Nietzsche is one of the biggest users of aphorisms and metaphors in philosophy. In its context, that expression references experience, and particularly what people can gain from a negative experience. By negative experience, Nietzsche didn't mean permanent, close-to-death damage, but rather experiences that force a person to shift her perspective, which Nietzsche himself experienced the period he was half-blind. All of this fits into Nietzsche's postulate of the Übermensch, how you as an individual need to strive to become the best version of yourself. As anyone probably knows, a strong experience can humble even the most ignorant bastard, and it's the power of these experiences which is the foundation of that quote. But that one is actually true. Some cover descriptions can be terrible, and the overall design often has little to do with the contents. I once found a VHS of Pulp Fiction in a video rental shop, long after I had become a fan of the movie. From the images and description on the box, I had never rented that movie. Well, and let me add that I know that this saying is not actually meant to be about books. I once read a horrible book for my book club. It was awful, terribly written, terrible characters, Terrible plot. I can think of no good thing to say about the writing in that book. It is the only book I wish I could just forget about entirely. That said, it had an incredible cover. To this day, probably my favorite book cover ever. Also, I'm 99% sure that most cover artists never read the book in question. I swear almost every book cover I have ever seen either has no correlation to the book or has correlation, but gets all the details wrong, which you can tell simply by reading the book. Book covers are almost certainly the worst way to judge a book. Basically, as has been pointed out, many of the common sayings we use only use part of the actual idiom. My personal cringe-inducing one is "great minds think alike, though fools seldom differ." The second half means the exact opposite of just saying "great minds think alike." This seems to be the case with a lot of our usage. I've told this story before on Reddit. People usually like, and it's relevant to this saying. Back when I was in the military, I was in a pretty long and rigorous course. And there was one dude that was such a goofball. We will call him Tony. Super funny, good dude. But goddamn did he ask a lot of dumb questions. He could easily wait until after class to ask another student or just whisper to the guy right next to him. Nah, he'd notch his hand straight into the air every 5 to 10 minutes it seems, promptly interrupting whatever training we were receiving. Finally one of our instructors snapped, "Jesus Christ, Tony. Why do you ask so many fucking stupid questions?" Tony just smirked and replied, "So I don't do something fucking stupid, Sergeant." We all lost it, including every other instructor besides the one who was actually pissed off with him. He was fuming lol. Tony fucking boomed him. This is so true. If time healed all wounds, everyone over 30 would be free of any trauma inflicted in childhood. Ask an elderly person about painful episodes of their younger years. You will be disabused of this stupid and harmful notion. Money can't buy happiness. The saying itself is true enough. It's about greed, and it is meant to mean that however much wealth you have, you can't buy your way to happiness. Being a millionaire or a billionaire won't necessarily make you happy. However, people badly misuse it almost as a refrain for those who are destitute, as if they don't deserve any more and it won't make them happy. It's that which is utter bullshit, because being able to afford healthcare, to feed your family, a roof over your head, and to not every day have annoying, desperate anxiety and unending stress about whether you can afford to live each week will make someone a fuck ton happier than the alternative. And that's nothing to do with greed. I feel like either I'm using it wrong or others are. I frequently say it in situations I have no control over. One example is recently my car was hit by an idiot driver not checking if there was an opening in my lane, and then a few days later I had a nail puncture and decimate my tire. Neither situation is anything I can control. All I can do is suffer the consequences, and saying it is what it is reminds me that it isn't my fault and that sometimes things just happen. If you can't remember it, then I guess it wasn't important. Bruh, I've got ADHD. I forget things like taking medication, eating food, drinking water, appointments, when things are, what the conversation was, what my thought was, and then after that it's the unimportant things probably. I promise you, that stuff is pretty damn important, and if I'm really focused on something then I'll forget everything there, but if I'm on a better day, then I'll still forget the last 3 or 4 I said on that list. My mother used to say to me as a kid, if other people jumped off a bridge or in a ditch, would you do the same? It was meant to imply that I shouldn't follow people blindly. But years later I saw this comedy show on television and the comedian said, if everybody were to jump off a bridge then there probably would be a good reason for that, and it probably wouldn't be in your best interest to stay on the bridge contemplating the pros and cons of jumping off the bridge. It's difficult in times like these. Ideals, dreams and cherished hopes rise within us, only to be crushed by grim reality. It's a wonder I haven't abandoned all my ideals. They seem so absurd and impractical, yet I cling to them because I still believe, in spite of everything, that people are truly good at heart and frank. And she's right, most people are kinda uncaring. The problem is rather how people do the world. Someone is being rude to you in the store. Oh, people are so rude, except that everyone else in there was not rude, outnumbering the rudeness 100 to 1. Rude and mean stands out, so we tend to remember them more. But truth is most people are nice to you all the time. It's just that since it's expected we don't really reflect upon it. Someone stopped their car to let you cross the road even though they could have kept driving. Someone just made an effort to make your day easier, but you won't remember this because your head is still with the rude person in the store. Good people do bad things all the time. It doesn't mean they are bad people. Most people are nice if we focus equally on nice actions as we do on the bad. I think most people try to be good and caring, but like so many forget those things when emotions come into play. Everyone is kinda a hypocrite in one way or the other. I try to think of it as everyone is doing their best and that their emotional outburst may be less to do with me and more to do with the shit in their lives. Some people are cruel assholes though, and there's no reasoning with that shit. If you work hard, you can be whatever you want to be. Not really. If everybody did work hard and we all get to work white-collar jobs, who is going to work those mundane jobs like garbage collector or plumbers, etc.? Point is, stop telling children that hard work is the only prerequisite. No, Timmy, the chances of becoming an astronaut is astronomically low. Try getting a job in NASA first, and maybe if you're really lucky you can be an astronaut. Follow your dreams. After my wife left me mentally broken and completely penniless at the age of 40, fucking Steven said this is an opportunity for you to follow your dreams like I did. Steven's dad gave him a company, and he 1000% believes he started from the bottom and pulled the bootstraps and followed his dream and is obviously successful because he has something other people don't. And actually that last part is true, because his dad gave him a company. Nope, there are no verifiable sources to back up this claim. The two authors who have made it haven't been able to support it. The longer saying is just a modern twist. Blood is thicker than water is the only saying of the two that can be verifiably traced back in time. Respect your elders. Do not get me wrong, I think elders deserve respect, as well as literally everyone else. An elderly person is walking behind me at the gas station, I will hold the door for them. A younger person is walking behind me at the gas station, I will open the hold for them also. My family, at least one my mom's side, has mostly very narrow-minded elderly people in it who make racist and just in general mean comments about people who are different. I do not believe them being elderly alone makes them deserving of more respect than my young cousins. While true that words can hurt, you can have a lot of power over how those words actually affect you. If someone calls me a worthless piece of shit, I can absolutely shrug it off and know it isn't true. But if someone starts beating me with a baseball bat, I can't magically will myself into being the Hulk. That's really what that saying is about, at least from my perspective. Dream anything, when you have never even been there or started. Dream job, dream school, dream graduate program, etc. I don't think anything should be your dream experience until you've actually experienced it. The way people talk about these dream goals is all about just the mere achievement of them, rather than learning anything or having a meaningful experience. You don't know what your dream job, school, or spouse is until you've been there a while. This dream everything puts too much focus on mere achievement and not living. It also sets people up for a golden handcuff type of situation where they feel that they can't leave, even if they are unhappy or not thriving, because they worked so hard just to get there. Sunk costs all around. The definition of insanity is repeating the same action and expecting a different outcome. Firstly, no. That's not the definition of insanity in any sense. Secondly, there are many reasons to perform an action and expect or hope for a different outcome. If you suspect the first outcome was a fluke, or the outcome is chance-based and you're looking to pull off an uncommon outcome, or if the surrounding conditions are different. I hate mindless truisms, and this is one of the dumber ones. Steinbeck's quote about Americans being temporarily embarrassed millionaires. It means the exact opposite. He wasn't talking about poor people thinking they'll be rich, but that rich people were often the bread and butter of socialist movements and thought who wouldn't actually do anything but would profess their leftist ideals while being comfortably millionaires, of which they were temporarily embarrassed. The actual, full quote, except for the field organizers of strikes, who were pretty tough monkeys and devoted, most of the so-called communists I met were middle-class, middle-aged people playing a game of dreams. I remember a woman in easy circumstances saying to another even more affluent, "After the revolution even we will have more, won't we, dear?" Then there was another lover of proletarians who used to raise hell with Sunday picnickers on her property. I guess the trouble was that we didn't have any self-admitted proletarians. Everyone was a temporarily embarrassed capitalist. Maybe the communists so closely questioned by the investigation committees were a danger to America, but the ones I knew, at least they claimed to be communists, couldn't have disrupted a Sunday school picnic. Besides, they were too busy fighting among themselves. Revenge is unsatisfying, says the people who never got revenge. It is satisfying when someone tries to fuck you over but you end up turning their friends against them. It's an awesome feeling when someone makes fun of you and you beat them until they're injured or lying on the ground. It's amazing. Satisfying when someone harms you when you get them into major trouble. It's beautiful. People saying revenge is unsatisfying either never took revenge, or they're pretentious virtue signalers. Nobody will love you until you love yourself. This is toxic bullshit that basically berates people for having mental illnesses or self-esteem issues that keep them from loving themselves. When boyfriend met me, I was an absolute emotional and immature mess, but he has still loved me every step of the way for almost 3 years now. And with his patience and support, I have grown into someone I didn't think I could ever be. He helped me get into therapy and the gym, and I moved out of my parents' place and got an actual job to support myself. While I am very, very far from loving myself, I have more respect for myself. I may not ever truly love myself, but in even more time, I think I'll be able to turn that into self-acceptance at the very least. You are worthy of love and can be loved even if you loathe yourself. If anyone spews this shitty line at you, honestly just walk away without a word, because that's poison you don't need or deserve. You need to love yourself before you can love someone else. I understand the sentiment of being comfortable on your own and working on yourself, but the fact is many people can be their best selves with the support of a partner in a healthy relationship. Also, being hyper-independent does not mean that you love yourself. Many people who don't love themselves are deeply loved by others. The exception proves the rule, at least the way many people use it. Many seem to think it means something along the lines of every rule has exceptions, but then using that phrase sounds like the exception itself demonstrates the rule, which is from a strictly logical perspective a bit silly tbh. As far as I know, the actual meaning is that if you state an exception you are implying the existence of a rule for all other cases, like, if I write no cash payment for fridges on a sign of my store, that implies that all other items can be paid for with cash. This use makes much more sense, but rarely I find people using it this way. The phrase comes from Latin and exists in many other languages as well, and apparently this misconception with it. Oh boy, this one. Ignorance may be bliss. But holy shit, did it make people outright dance. Everyone seems to forget that echo chambers were around far before computers, and quite frankly the good old US was fond of its own propaganda. All of these bad things happening around nowadays have always been there, but you know, people want to think they're super intelligent with their BAC and my DA. Money doesn't buy happiness. Sorry, but whoever came up with that clearly had never lived with the worry of making rent on top of having enough money for food, taking care of pets, paying for water, power, and other utilities, etc. And let's not even get started on being able to go to the doctor if you need to, dentist, get your eyes checks, And then after all that, being able to just get things you want or being able to do what you want, money might not buy the happiness itself, but it sure as hell buys everything that makes your life livable and enjoyable so you can be happy. And let's not forget depression meds for people who needs them, so like, in a way it kinda does buy happiness too.